At Sunday dinner in Brighton, my mum whispered, "We don't need you anymore." I stayed silent. And that silence changed everything. Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a room you grew up in, only to feel like a stranger in it? Not because the furniture changed. Not because the walls were painted. But because the people you once trusted shifted into something you can't quite name. That was me the night everything cracked open. I'd taken the train from London to Brighton like I had so many times before. A simple 2-hour ride. A ride I used to take with excitement, even comfort. Home, for me, always meant safety with warm meals, familiar faces, and the soft feeling that no matter how messy the outside world became, this house would stay the same. But the moment I stepped through my mother's front door, I felt it. A quiet I didn't recognize. A heaviness that pressed against my chest like unseen hands. The dining room looked exactly as I remembered. Mum's lace table runner, the old wooden chairs. Dad's favorite painting of the Seven Sisters cliffs, even Aaron's ridiculous coastal-themed salt and pepper shakers he insisted were quirky. Nothing changed. Except them. Mum didn't greet me with a warm hug. She barely lifted her eyes from her plate, as if I were an unexpected delivery driver dropping off a parcel at the wrong house. Dad gave a single nod, polite, distant, almost rehearsed. And then there was Aaron. He smiled. But it wasn't a brother's welcome. It was thin, tight, stretched across his face like he was bracing for impact or savoring a secret. It was the kind of smile people wear when they know something you don't. I tried to brush it off. Tried to tell myself they were tired, preoccupied, distracted. Families have those moments, right? So I sat down. I asked about Mum's new catering business she couldn't stop posting about online. She answered with a single sentence. I asked about Dad's early retirement. He gave me numbers, not feelings. I asked Aaron about his new promotion at the bank. He shrugged, barely glancing up. Everything felt stiff. Controlled. Like they were following a script someone handed them 5 minutes before I arrived. Still, I kept trying. Still, I told myself it was nothing. Halfway through dinner, Mum set down her fork with a sharp, intentional clink. The kind of sound that slices through a room. "Lena," she said. No warmth. No softness. Just my name, spoken like a duty. I straightened. Dad lowered his eyes. Aaron looked too eager, too ready, like he'd been waiting for a cue. "We need to be honest," Mum said. 3 words. So simple. So devastating. She took in a breath, slow, steady, prepared. "We don't need your money anymore," she said. "Or you." For one tiny second, my brain rejected the sentence entirely. The world blurred at the edges. Maybe she meant it differently. Maybe she phrased it wrong. Maybe I misunderstood. But then Aaron leaned back, arms folded, eyes steady, and said the words that branded themselves into my skin. "She's right. You've done enough. We're fine without you. We're fine without you." Something inside me sank. But not in the way they expected. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't betrayal. It was clarity, sharp, cold, honest clarity. The kind that doesn't come gently. I waited for an explanation. A joke. A sign that this wasn't real. But nobody laughed. Nobody softened. Nobody looked at me like I belonged at that table. Silence stretched across the room like another person. And that was when I realized this moment was planned. Not spontaneous. Not emotional. Planned. But by who, I didn't know. Not yet. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. Instead, I went still. Very still. They mistook that stillness for weakness. For shock. For surrender. But here's what you, watching this story now, will learn before I did. This wasn't Mum's idea. This wasn't Dad's idea. And despite his smug posture and overconfident smile, it wasn't Aaron's idea either. There was someone else. Someone standing in the shadows of their fear. Someone quietly pulling the strings. Someone with motives rooted deep in secrets I hadn't uncovered yet. Someone who believed that hurting me was the only way to save themselves. But at that moment, I knew none of that. I only knew one thing. Love shouldn't feel like a transaction. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the wooden floor, a harsh, final note. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. No one called my name. It was almost funny, in a twisted way. I spent years trying to earn a place in that family, sending money when they struggled, being the responsible one, cleaning up messes no one admitted to creating. And yet walking away took less effort than lifting my fork. The night air hit me the moment I stepped outside, cold, salty, alive. The sea breeze carried the faint sound of waves crashing against the Brighton shore, and for the first time all evening, I could breathe. My hands trembled, but not from fear. My eyes burned, but not from tears. My heart raced, but not from pain. A different part of me had woken up. A part one had buried for years. A part that finally whispered. Enough. Enough of earning love. Enough of carrying a family on my back. Enough of shrinking myself to keep the peace. The street was wet from an earlier drizzle, and the streetlights cast long shimmering lines across the pavement. Everything felt clearer out there than it ever had inside that house. I thought leaving that dinner was the end. But it wasn't. It was the beginning. Because silence, my silence, didn't make me powerless. It made me dangerous. It made me observant. Patient. Focused. And that quiet moment on the sidewalk became the first step toward everything that came after, the lies, the secrets, the betrayal behind the betrayal, and the person orchestrating it all. I walked away from the house. But I had no idea that someone, somewhere, was already preparing their next move. And they weren't finished with me. Not even close. Have you ever woken up from a night you didn't sleep through, your eyes burning, your body heavy, but your mind too sharp to rest? That was me. Back in my tiny London flat, long before the sun rose, staring at the ceiling while the city breathed around me. No tears. No breakdown. Just a quiet storm building under my ribs. I kept replaying last night like a scene on repeat, my mother's cold voice, Dad's lowered eyes, Aaron's smug grin. We don't need you anymore. Those words echoed through my chest like footsteps in an empty hall. But here's the thing, I knew them. I knew their patterns, their tells, their histories. And the story they'd tried to sell me didn't add up. For 10 years, I'd been the one patching every crack in that family. When Dad's hours got cut at the hotel and he was too embarrassed to tell Mom, I wired the money. Quietly. When Aaron accidentally crashed his car, twice, and needed repairs so he wouldn't lose his job, I paid for both accidents, even though he blamed the first one on wet roads and the second on a cat. When Mom launched her catering business and pretended she bought her equipment wholesale, I knew better. I was the wholesale. And I never complained. Not once. Not because I was trying to be the hero, but because family, real family, doesn't keep score. But now? They were rewriting the entire story. Excluding me. Erasing me. Pretending I had never been the quiet backbone holding everything upright. And that hurt in a deeper way than I expected. By the time the sky lightened and the morning traffic began humming outside, I reached for my phone, not to check messages, because no one had bothered to send any, but to distract myself. Instead, the betrayal found me. It wasn't subtle. It didn't hide. It showed up bold and bright, like a punch straight to the chest. A new post from Aaron's page. A photo of him standing inside his brand new tech repair shop, smiling like someone posing for a magazine cover. He wore confidence like a costume he didn't earn. The caption hit harder than the image. Built every brick myself. Self-made. No handouts. I blinked. Read it again. And again. Self-made. No handouts. I nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was bold. Audacious. Almost impressive, the way a liar can reshape reality with a few keystrokes. My stomach tightened as I scrolled through the comments. People cheering him on like he was the poster child for hustle culture. Aaron, you're such an inspiration. You've always worked harder than everyone. Your sister should learn from you. Some people don't want success. That one stung, not because it was true, but because it was exactly what he wanted people to believe. But the real knife landed next. A comment from someone named Nadine. And when I saw her profile picture, my breath stilled. Her. Nadine. The same girl who once stole money from Aaron when they were teenagers. The same girl who bragged for years that she could manipulate any man with one smile. A girl I never trusted, not back then, not now. She wrote. See? Told you he never needed Lena. He's always been better without her. Better without me. My chest tightened, but not with heartbreak. With warning. Because that line felt too pointed. Too intentional. Too rehearsed. And before I could finish processing it, Aaron replied to her with a laughing emoji. Just a single yellow face, careless and loud. It shouldn't have mattered. But it did. Not because I expected him to defend me, clearly, that was too much. But because the comment wasn't random. It felt like part of something bigger. Something coordinated. Something I wasn't supposed to notice. And as I sat there in my dim little flat, surrounded by silence and memories of everything I had sacrificed, something inside me cracked open. But the crack didn't spill pain. It spilled clarity. Cold, sharp, undeniable clarity. This wasn't about pride. It wasn't about boundaries. It wasn't even about family drama. This was a rewrite. A deliberate erasure. A removal of my place, my efforts, my existence in their story. They didn't just want to distance themselves. They wanted a world where Lena, the helper, the fixer, the protector, never existed at all. And here's the part that chilled me the most. No one rewrites a story unless they're hiding something. My heartbeat steadied. My breath slowed. A strange stillness settled over me. Silence no longer felt like surrender. It felt like strategy. Because if they wanted a world where I didn't exist, if they wanted to pretend they built everything on their own, if they wanted to lie boldly and publicly, then they were afraid of something. Or someone. Or me. Not the me who funded their lives. Not the me who forgave too easily. Not the me who tried to keep peace even while breaking inside. No. They were afraid of the version of me who finally stopped talking. And started watching. I set my phone down slowly, my fingers trembling, not with weakness, but with awakening. Silence wasn't a wound. It was a weapon. Not to use against them. But to protect myself. Because lies crack eventually. Truth leaks through tiny openings. Secrets rot from the inside out. And Aaron's post, his sudden pride, his sudden rewriting of history, wasn't confidence. It was panic dressed in bravado. Someone had pushed him. Someone had convinced him he didn't need me. Someone was feeding him a narrative strong enough that he felt brave enough to delete me from his success. But why? What did erasing me protect? Who did it benefit? And why now, after 10 years of dependence, was he suddenly desperate to prove he never needed me at all? These were questions I wasn't supposed to ask. Questions I wasn't supposed to see. Questions someone prayed I'd ignore. But they underestimated one thing. I wasn't the same Lena who walked into that Brighton dining room with hope in my chest. I was the Lena who walked out of it with silence in my pocket and questions burning in my hands. My phone buzzed suddenly, interrupting my thoughts. A message request. From someone I hadn't heard from in years. Someone connected to all of this. Someone whose name alone made my pulse sharpen. The message was short. One line. But it changed everything. Lena, you need to know what really happened. And just like that, this wasn't the middle of the story. It was the spark. The beginning of the unraveling. The first thread pulled loose in a web someone worked very hard to keep intact. Because the truth wasn't hiding from me. It was running toward me. Fast. Here's a question for you. When someone betrays you, do you react with fire? Or with precision? Because that morning, sitting in my small London flat with the sunlight barely touching the floor, I realized something. Anger burns fast. Precision burns clean. I didn't want chaos. I wanted clarity. I wanted peace. And peace, sometimes, looks like reclaiming what's yours without apology. So I opened my laptop, not with shaking hands or furious fingers, but with calm, steady purpose. The calm of someone who finally sees the truth. The calm of someone done begging for space in a story they built from the start. The calm of someone who knows silence is sharper than shouting. I took a breath, cracked my knuckles, and began. Step 1, the shop lease. Aaron loved bragging online about being self-made. Self-made, yet the lease for his entire shop sat in my name because his credit score was somewhere between disastrous and fictional. He'd begged me to sign it. Promised he'd take over in 6 months. 6 months turned into 2 years. 2 years of me paying rent when business was slow. 2 years of me protecting his dream from collapsing. So I drafted an email, short, direct, emotionless. I will not be renewing the lease next quarter. Please communicate all future notices to me as the legal tenant. I reread it once. No guilt. No hesitation. Send. A single click that shifted the ground under his feet. Step 2, the equipment. Aaron's shiny machines, the ones he posed with online, were all purchased with my credit card. Every soldering tool. Every diagnostic system. Every polished display case. Everything. I had receipts, serial numbers, the whole digital trail. So I contacted the company's asset recovery department and sent them the full list. Equipment retrieval, immediate. Not next week. Not after negotiations. Now. I imagined the moment he'd walk into the shop and see blank spaces where his equipment used to be. The shelves bare. The counters empty. Reality finally catching up. And for the first time since last night's dinner, I felt something close to relief. Step 3, Mum's catering van. Ah, the catering van. Her pride. Her joy. Her business investment. Registered in my name. Insured under my account. Serviced on my dime. She always said, it's just temporary, darling. When I'm fully set up, I'll transfer everything. She never did. So I made one call, simple, efficient. Insurance cancelled. Vehicle flagged for repossession. All legal. All mine. Not revenge. Not spite. Self-respect. When people show you they don't need you, I whispered into the stillness of my flat. Believe them. It wasn't a threat. It was a reminder. A gentle one. A necessary one. And then Brighton started buzzing. If you know anything about small towns, you know this. Rumors travel faster than wind, faster than light, faster than truth. By the time the sun set, Brighton was a wildfire. Screenshots. WhatsApp group chats. Voice notes. Facebook aunties doing detective work. My phone vibrated non-stop. Did Lena take everything? I thought Aaron built that shop alone. Maggie's van is gone, what happened? I knew something was off, didn't I say it? Someone even posted. Self-made where? She made him. And just like that, I wasn't the villain. I was the truth they could no longer bury. The truth they tried to silence. And Brighton? Brighton loves truth when it comes wrapped in drama. By evening, the tone shifted completely. People weren't whispering behind my back. They were calling out the lies openly. And that's when my phone rang. Dad. The call. His name lit up my screen, and for a moment, I didn't know whether to answer. Because last night, he hadn't defended me. He hadn't spoken up. He hadn't even looked at me properly. But something in my chest tugged. So I swiped to answer. His voice came trembling through the speaker. Lena. A pause. A defeated breath. Just come home. Please. There's something you need to know. There it was again, the heaviness I felt in that dining room. Not tension. Not anger. Fear. Their fear wasn't of losing me. Their fear was of something else entirely. Dad, I said quietly. If you want to talk, then talk now. No. Not over the phone, he insisted. Another shaky breath. Just come home. It's about why your mother said what she did. It's about all of us. You're not safe out there if you don't know the truth. Not safe. That word lodged itself in my ribs. What truth? Silence. A long one. A guilty one. Finally, he said. I'm sorry, Lena. I should have told you earlier. We all should have. But someone convinced us this was the only way. The only way. Those words chilled me. Who? I asked. His breath hitched. I can't say it. Not yet. Dad. He cut in, voice breaking. Please. Come home. But I didn't. Not yet. Because fear can make people lie. Fear can make people push away the ones they love. Fear can make someone rewrite an entire decade to protect a secret. And the truth was simple. There was something in that house. Something rotting beneath the surface. Something that drove them to cut me out like a diseased limb. And that someone Dad mentioned? That was the shadow I'd been sensing since the moment I stepped into the dining room. The shadow behind Mum's sudden coldness. The shadow behind Aaron's new confidence. The shadow behind the desperate rewriting of family history. Someone who thought hurting me was the only way to protect themselves. Someone who had something to lose. Or something to hide. Or someone to shield. Someone who was about to step into the light whether they wanted to or not. Because secrets don't stay buried once you start pulling at threads. And I had pulled the first one. Now, everything was unraveling. And whoever hid behind that curtain, they were running out of time. Have you ever walked into a room knowing you're not welcome? But also knowing you no longer care? That was me the next morning. I drove from London to Brighton with a calmness that didn't match the storm beneath it. Not to mend things. Not to reclaim a seat at a table that no longer had space for me. I drove there to end something. A story. A cycle. A version of myself. The sky was overcast when I pulled into the driveway, the air heavy with the smell of the sea, a Brighton warning that a storm was coming. A fitting omen. I stepped out of the car and walked to the door with steady footsteps. Mum must have heard them, because she opened the door before I knocked. She froze the moment she saw me. Not angry. Not defensive. Just tired. I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. The house felt colder than I remembered, the silence thick like fog. Dad sat at the kitchen table, head bowed, eyes red. He looked like he hadn't slept. Or like something had shattered inside him. Mum stood by the counter, wringing her hands. Her shoulders were tense, her face pale. She looked older, not in years, but in regret. And then there was Aaron. Arms crossed. Jaw tight. Trying to look angry. But the fear in his eyes betrayed him. No one spoke. The tension felt like a string pulled so tight, it was one breath away from snapping. I set my bag down on the floor and said nothing. If they wanted to talk, I'd let them start it. But the voice that spoke next didn't belong to any of them. It came from behind me, from the hallway. A pair of heels clicked slowly on the wooden floor. And then she appeared. Nadine. Her hair perfectly done, her clothes too tidy for a casual visit, her smirk polished enough to belong on a warning label. She folded her arms and leaned against the doorway like she owned the house. "You weren't supposed to ruin everything," she said. Her tone wasn't loud. But it sliced through the room. Mum winced. Dad shut his eyes. Aaron swallowed, hard. And suddenly, everything made sense. The coldness at dinner. The clipped answers. The rehearsed distance. The way their eyes slid past mine like I was a threat they were trained to avoid. Nadine. Of course. She stepped fully into the kitchen now, chin tilted high, her expression confident in that way only people who feel untouchable can manage. "You just couldn't leave things alone," she continued. "You always had to control everything." That word, control, hit a nerve. My heartbeat slowed. My breathing steadied. Because that was it, wasn't it? The poison she'd whispered into their ears. That my help wasn't help. That it was power. Manipulation. Control. She had planted the seed that I wasn't a supporter, I was a threat. Aaron wouldn't have come up with that on his own. Mum wouldn't have believed it without someone feeding her fear. Dad wouldn't have gone silent unless someone convinced him silence was safer. And Nadine. Nadine had done exactly that. But why? Why now? Why so fiercely? Why risk fracturing a family she barely even knew? Then I saw it. The slight swell beneath her loose blouse. The subconscious hand resting on it. The flicker of protectiveness in her eyes. She was pregnant. And that changed everything. Not because of the baby. But because of what it meant for her. She wasn't evil. She wasn't malicious for sport. She was scared. Scared Aaron would lean on me the way he always had. Scared he'd prioritize the sister who bailed him out. Over the girlfriend carrying his child. In her mind, I wasn't helping him. I was overshadowing him. Threatening her future. Threatening her stability. Threatening the role she wanted to fill in his life. So she did the oldest thing in the book. She built a story. A narrative where I was the villain. Where removing me wasn't cruelty, it was protection. And the worst part? My family believed her. All of them. I looked at Mum. Her face crumpled under the weight of guilt. "We just thought you'd take over his life again," she whispered. "You always step in, Lena. And we thought, maybe it wasn't healthy anymore." Dad rubbed his temples, shaking his head. "We were tired of feeling like burdens," he said quietly. "Tired of needing you. Tired of letting you carry all of us." Aaron stepped forward, voice cracking. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," he said. I didn't want to depend on you forever." And there it was. Not malice. Not hatred. Fear. Fear of being weak. Fear of relying on me. Fear of facing the truth that my support had become their safety net. They didn't hate me. They hated needing me. Painfully human. Deeply flawed. And devastating in its simplicity. But even understanding the truth didn't undo the damage. Understanding isn't the same as forgiveness. And fear isn't an excuse for betrayal. I stared at them, these people I had loved, protected, carried, and felt something in my chest loosen. Not break. Release. I only ever helped because I loved you, I whispered. And you punished me for it. For a moment, no one breathed. Aaron's eyes filled, and he took a step toward me. Lena, wait. But before he could finish, the doorbell rang. A soft, unexpected chime that cut the tension cleanly. We all turned. Mum hurried toward the door, confused. When she opened it, a familiar figure stepped inside. Mrs. Alderton. Our elderly neighbor. Kind. Gentle. Wise in the way only older women can be. She held a tray covered with foil, her expression soft. I heard there was trouble, she said quietly. So I brought something warm. Mum opened her mouth, but Mrs. Alderton walked straight past her, straight to me. She touched my cheek gently. Lena, she murmured, you saved that boy. When he fell apart, you were the one who picked him up. Everyone knows it. She turned slowly, facing my family. You pushed away the only person who ever lifted any of you. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't accusing. It was kind. Honest. Uncomfortably so. And somehow, that kindness hit harder than cruelty ever could. Because in that moment, her words confirmed what I had tried not to admit. I wasn't wrong. I wasn't manipulative. I wasn't controlling. I wasn't unneeded. I was loved. Just not by the people I'd spent my entire life trying to save. And that realization? That was the breaking point. Not a breakdown. A breakthrough. The moment I stopped fighting for a family who wasn't fighting for me. The moment I understood that sometimes the villain isn't a person, it's a pattern. A pattern I was finally ready to break. Because the story wasn't ending here. Something else was coming. Bigger. Darker. Closer than any of us realized. And the person who knocked first? Wasn't the only one on their way. I didn't shout. I didn't explode. I didn't give them the grand scene they might have expected after everything that had happened. Instead, I stood there, quiet, steady, unshaken, and looked at them as if seeing them clearly for the very first time. My parents. My brother. And Nadine, who hovered behind them, arms crossed, eyes darting everywhere but mine. A strange stillness moved through me. Not anger. Not relief. Something gentler. Peace. I'm not your enemy, I said. My voice didn't waver. But I'm done being your foundation. For a moment, the room stopped breathing. My father's shoulders sagged. My mother pressed her fingertips to her lips, as if holding back something she wasn't brave enough to say. And Aaron, his face cracked before my eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered. Tears gathered along his lashes, trembling like they didn't know where to fall. I didn't know how to tell her no. I didn't know how to need you without resenting you. Hearing that broke something inside me, not painfully, but cleanly. Like a cord snapping that should have been cut years ago. I nodded. A small, quiet gesture. I know. But knowing didn't undo the damage. And forgiveness, real forgiveness, doesn't erase consequences. It simply makes room for both people to walk forward without chains. So I let everything stand. The lease he begged me to sign stayed in my name, until it expired and dissolved like a paper house in rain. The equipment I paid for remained gone, pulled from his shop floor and taken back by the company that owned it. The catering van, Mum's pride, retrieved, just as the paperwork allowed. None of it out of revenge. Not anymore. This was release. This was the first boundary I'd ever drawn with them. Not a line in anger. A line in dignity. When I stepped outside that house, the sea wind wrapped around me, cold, sharp, honest. Like Brighton itself was saying, you did it. You finally chose you. For the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying anyone. Back in my London flat, everything felt different. The walls didn't press inward anymore. The silence didn't feel heavy. My bed didn't feel like the only safe place in the world. I made tea. Opened the window. Let the afternoon sunlight spill across the kitchen counter like a blessing I didn't realize I'd earned. And I breathed. Not the shallow breaths of survival. Real breaths. Deep ones. In the months that followed, I rebuilt, not a life that revolved around others, but a life that finally had me in the center. Therapy helped me peel apart years of responsibility I'd been convinced were love. I made new friends, people who didn't drain me, who didn't flinch when I said no, who didn't see generosity as a resource to mine. Work became less of an escape and more of a place where I thrived. I earned a promotion, not because I was desperate to prove something, but because I finally had space to grow. For the first time, the quiet wasn't threatening. It was nourishing. It was mine. One evening, long after I'd stopped expecting anything from them, a message appeared on my phone. It was from Erin. A single photo. A newborn baby girl, swaddled in soft pink, her tiny hands balled into fists, her cheeks round and impossibly soft. She was sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of the chaos she'd been born into, the battles fought, the hearts broken, the truths revealed. Beneath the picture, just one line. I want her to know you. If you'll have us. I stared at the message for a long time, long enough for my tea to grow cold, long enough for my heartbeat to settle into something steady. I didn't reply right away. Some wounds don't heal with apologies. Some stories need time between chapters. But I smiled. A small, quiet smile that reached a place inside me I'd thought was permanently numb. Because for once, he wasn't asking for money. Or help. Or rescue. He wasn't asking for permission to drain me again. He was asking for me. Just me. And that, after everything, felt like the real revenge. Not the equipment repossessed. Not the lease expiring in my favor. Not the village whispers or the shockwave of consequences. The real revenge was this. Living a life so whole, so calm, so grounded. That the people who once threw you away had to grow into the kind of people who finally deserved a place in your world. Freedom is rarely loud. It doesn't always arrive as fireworks or triumphant music. Sometimes it's quieter, like the sound of your own footsteps walking away from a house that no longer owns you. Sometimes freedom is simply the moment you realize your story didn't end in betrayal. It began with it. Because once the people who mistreated you lose access to you, they lose the version of control they mistook for love. And you gain yourself. Fully. Finally. And that is the kind of justice no one can take back. That night, as I sat with the city lights flickering through my window, I thought about everything I'd survived. Everything I'd carried. Everything I'd released. And I felt something new, something I hadn't felt since childhood. Hope. Not the fragile kind. The real kind. The kind built on foundations that can't be rewritten or erased. Because the truth was simple. My story had never been about losing a family. It had been about finding myself. And that is where this story ends, but not where my life ends. There are choices ahead. Doors I haven't opened yet. A niece I may one day hold. A family that may or may not grow into the one I needed. And a life that feels like it's only just beginning. You've walked every step of this journey with me, and if you want more stories of betrayal, justice, and emotional triumph, stories that hit hard and stay with you, then stay close. This is Venge Tale Story. If this story moved you, taught you something, or kept you glued to the screen, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps this channel continue, and trust me. The next tale? It's already waiting. If this story touched you, tell me where you're watching from. Like, comment, and subscribe to Venge Tale Story for more powerful stories like this.